My wife got drunk at Truth or Dare and whispered her darkest secret in my ear. What she confessed about my best friend made me plan the most devastating revenge of my life. Subscribe to the channel and like the video to see more stories like this. 34 years old. That number represents stability, trust, and what I thought was a perfect marriage. My name is David, and for the past 8 years, I've been living what I believed was the American dream in Austin, Texas. I'm a software engineer at a tech startup, pulling in 6 figures, and my wife Sarah works as a marketing coordinator at a local agency. We have a beautiful 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood, 2 cars paid off, and what everyone around us called relationship goals. Sarah and I met in college. She was the girl everyone wanted to date, blonde, athletic, with this infectious laugh that could light up any room. I was the quiet tech guy who somehow got lucky enough to catch her attention during our senior year. We dated for 3 years before I proposed, and our wedding was everything we'd dreamed of. Small, intimate, surrounded by our closest friends and family. Our social circle was tight-knit. There was Marcus, my best friend since high school, who'd been my best man at the wedding. Marcus worked in real estate and had this natural charisma that made him successful with clients and popular at parties. His wife Jenny was Sarah's closest friend. They'd bonded immediately when Marcus and I introduced them years ago. The 4 of us did everything together. Double dates, weekend trips, game nights at each other's houses. We were inseparable. Then there was Tom and Lisa, another couple we'd grown close with through work connections. Tom was also in tech, and Lisa worked at the same agency as Sarah. Our group of 6 had become like family over the years. We celebrated birthdays together, spent holidays together when we couldn't make it home to our families, and supported each other through career changes and life challenges. Our house became the unofficial gathering spot. Sarah loved hosting, and I enjoyed having our friends over. The living room was spacious enough for our group, with a large sectional sofa that could seat everyone comfortably. Sarah had decorated it with warm colors and personal touches that made everyone feel welcome. The kitchen opened up to the living room, making it perfect for entertaining. I thought I knew everything about Sarah. She was organized, ambitious, and incredibly social. She had this way of making everyone feel special when they talked to her. She remembered birthdays, asked about people's families, and always knew exactly what to say when someone was going through a tough time. She was the glue that held our friend group together. We had our routines. Friday nights were usually reserved for our friend group. Saturday mornings we'd go for runs together through the neighborhood. Sunday evenings were our time, just the 2 of us, cooking dinner and watching movies. We talked about everything. Or so I thought. We shared our dreams of buying a bigger house someday, maybe starting a family in a few years, and growing old together. Sarah had always been a social drinker, but never excessive. She'd have a glass of wine with dinner, or a few drinks when we went out with friends. She was fun when she drank, more talkative, more animated, but never sloppy or inappropriate. At least, that's what I thought. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. The way she'd sometimes check her phone and quickly put it away when I walked into the room. How she'd started working later than usual, claiming new projects at the agency. The way she'd occasionally space out during our conversations, like her mind was somewhere else entirely. But I trusted her completely. In 8 years together, the thought of infidelity had never seriously crossed my mind. We had a good relationship, great communication, and an active social life. We laughed together, supported each other's careers, and seemed to want the same things out of life. Marcus had been my friend for over 15 years. He was the brother I never had. We'd been through everything together. High school, college, my father's death 3 years ago, his struggles with starting his real estate business. He was loyal, honest, and someone I would have trusted with my life. The idea that he could betray me was simply incomprehensible. That Friday night in September started like any other. Sarah had suggested having everyone over for game night, and I'd agreed enthusiastically. She'd spent the afternoon preparing snacks and making sure we had everyone's favorite drinks stocked. I'd helped set up the living room, moving the coffee table to create more space for our usual circle on the floor. By 7 o'clock, everyone had arrived. Marcus and Jenny brought their famous spinach and artichoke dip. Tom and Lisa contributed a bottle of expensive whiskey Tom had been saving. The atmosphere was relaxed and familiar. The kind of evening we'd shared hundreds of times before. We started with board games, but as the drinks flowed and the evening progressed, someone suggested Truth or Dare. It was Jenny's idea, actually. She'd been drinking wine and was feeling nostalgic about college parties. We all laughed about how ridiculous we'd feel playing a game we hadn't touched since we were teenagers, but the alcohol made it seem like a fun idea. What I didn't know was that this innocent game was about to reveal a truth that would shatter everything I believed about my life, my marriage, and my closest friendship. The Truth or Dare game started innocently enough. Jenny went first, choosing Dare, and Marcus challenged her to call her mother and sing happy birthday, even though it wasn't her birthday. We all laughed as she stumbled through the song while her confused mother asked if she'd been drinking. Tom chose Truth, and admitted he'd had a crush on his high school math teacher. Lisa picked Dare, and had to do her best impression of our boss, which had us all in stitches. Sarah was sitting next to me on the floor, leaning against my shoulder. She'd already had 3 glasses of wine, which was more than usual for her, but she seemed happy and relaxed. When it was her turn, she chose Truth. Marcus Marcus, grinning mischievously, asked her what her most embarrassing moment from college was. She told a funny story about accidentally walking into the wrong classroom and sitting through an entire advanced calculus lecture before realizing her mistake. As the game continued, the questions and dares became more personal, as they always do. Marcus admitted he'd once lied on his resume about knowing Spanish. Jenny confessed she'd never actually read any of the classic novels she claimed were her favorites. Tom dared Lisa to text her ex-boyfriend, "I miss you," which she refused to do, taking the penalty shot instead. I noticed Sarah was getting drunker than I'd ever seen her. Her cheeks were flushed, and she was laughing a little too loudly at everything. When someone suggested switching to shots instead of wine, I should have intervened, but everyone was having such a good time. Sarah insisted she was fine, and I didn't want to be the overprotective husband who ruined the fun. By 10 o'clock, Sarah was definitely intoxicated. She was swaying slightly even while sitting down, and her words were starting to slur just a bit, but she was still engaged in the game, still laughing with everyone else. When it was her turn again, she chose truth once more. This time, Lisa asked the question that would change everything. "What's the biggest secret you've never told David?" The room went quiet for a moment. Everyone was looking at Sarah, waiting for her answer. She giggled and took another sip of wine, seeming to think about it. I expected something harmless, maybe that she'd broken something of mine and never told me, or that she'd lied about liking some movie I'd made her watch. "I can't tell you guys," she said, still giggling. "It's too big." "Come on," Jenny encouraged. "That's the whole point of Truth or Dare. You have to answer." Sarah looked around the circle, her eyes unfocused. Then she looked at me and smiled in a way that made my stomach feel strange. "Okay, but I'm only telling David," she said. "Everyone else close your eyes." I thought it was just drunk logic, wanting to share a secret but still maintain some privacy. Everyone laughed and covered their eyes dramatically. Sarah scooted closer to me, putting her mouth right next to my ear. Her breath smelled like wine and the mint gum she'd been chewing earlier. What she whispered next made my blood run cold. "I've been sleeping with Marcus for over a year." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the room spin around me, but I somehow managed to keep my expression neutral. Sarah pulled back and looked at me with this glassy-eyed smile, like she'd just told me she loved me. The alcohol had clearly impaired her judgment so severely that she thought this was just another harmless secret. "Your turn," she said cheerfully, as if she hadn't just destroyed my entire world. I looked around the circle. Marcus was still covering his eyes with his hands, laughing with the others about Sarah's mysterious secret. Jenny was giggling and asking if it was embarrassing. Tom and Lisa were joking about how it was probably something silly like hiding shopping purchases. Marcus, my best friend for 15 years, the man who'd been my best man, who I'd trusted with everything, who'd comforted me when my father died. Marcus, who was sitting 3 feet away from me, pretending to cover his eyes while his wife sat beside him, completely unaware that her husband had been having an affair with her best friend. I managed to force a smile and play along for the rest of the game. Somehow, I answered questions and participated in dares, while my mind reeled with the implications of what Sarah had just confessed. Every time I looked at Marcus, I felt sick. Every time I caught Sarah looking at him when she thought no one was watching, I noticed things I'd never seen before. The way she lingered when she handed him a drink. How her laugh was different when he made a joke. The subtle glances they shared across the room. How had I been so blind? How long had this been going on right under my nose? As the evening wound down around midnight, I watched Marcus help clean up in our kitchen. He was joking with me about work, asking about a project I'd mentioned last week, acting completely normal. The casual way he moved through our house, knowing where we kept things, helping himself to a glass of water from our refrigerator, it all took on a sinister new meaning. "Great night, man," he said, clapping me on the shoulder as he and Jenny prepared to leave. Sarah really knows how to throw a party. I wanted to grab him by the throat. I wanted to scream at him, to demand answers, to punch him in the face. Instead, I smiled and agreed. Yeah, she's great at bringing people together. Sarah was saying goodbye to everyone at the front door, hugging them all warmly. When she hugged Marcus, I watched carefully. It lasted maybe a second longer than necessary. Her hand lingered on his back. They didn't look at each other differently than they ever had, but now I knew what I was looking for. After everyone left, Sarah stumbled upstairs, mumbling about needing to get ready for bed. I told her I'd be up in a few minutes, that I just wanted to clean up the rest of the kitchen. In reality, I needed time to process what I'd learned. I stood in our kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of what had seemed like a perfect evening with our closest friends, and tried to make sense of my new reality. My wife of 5 years had been cheating on me with my best friend for over a year. They'd been carrying on this affair while sitting at our dinner table, while going on double dates, while celebrating holidays and birthdays together. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I felt physically ill. But underneath the hurt and shock, something else was growing, something cold and calculating. Sarah had made a crucial mistake tonight. She'd given me information while drunk that she would never have shared sober, and she had no idea I'd heard it clearly and understood every word. As I loaded the dishwasher and turned off the lights, one thought kept running through my mind. They had no idea that I knew, and that gave me something I'd never had before in this situation. The element of surprise. surprise, and time to plan exactly how I was going to use this devastating secret against them both. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a massive hangover and no memory of what she'd confessed. She shuffled into the kitchen where I was making coffee, squinting against the sunlight streaming through the windows. "Oh God, my head," she groaned, accepting the cup of coffee I handed her. "I think I drank way too much last night. Please tell me I didn't do anything embarrassing." I looked at her carefully, studying her face for any sign that she remembered. There was nothing, just genuine concern about typical drunk behavior, saying something silly, falling down, spilling wine on someone's shirt. "You were fine," I said, my voice steady, just a little more talkative than usual. She sighed with relief. "Good. I remember playing Truth or Dare, but everything after 10 o'clock is pretty fuzzy." She took a sip of coffee and winced. "Did I answer any embarrassing questions?" "Nothing too bad," I replied. "You told everyone about walking into the wrong classroom in college." "Oh right, that old story." She laughed softly, then pressed her palm against her forehead. "I'm never drinking that much wine again." Over the next few days, I became a detective in my own life. I started paying attention to things I'd previously overlooked. Sarah's phone habits, her work schedule, the way she acted when Marcus's name came up in conversation. I began noticing patterns that had been invisible to me before. Sarah always kept her phone face down on surfaces. When it buzzed with notifications, she'd quickly glance at it and either ignore it or step away to respond privately. She'd started taking longer showers in the evenings, sometimes 20 or 30 minutes when she used to be quick and efficient. Her work clothes had become more carefully selected. She spent extra time in the mornings choosing outfits and doing her makeup. The most telling sign was her behavior during our group hangouts. I started watching her interactions with Marcus more closely. They had this subtle communication system I'd never noticed before. A look across the room when someone made a joke. Her offering to help him get drinks from the kitchen. The way they never seemed to arrive at the same time or leave together, as if they were being deliberately careful about appearances. 3 weeks after the Truth or Dare game, I decided to test my theory. I told Sarah I had to work late on a Thursday evening, claiming a major deadline for a client project. Instead, I left work at my normal time and parked down the street from her office building. At 5:30, Sarah emerged from the building, but instead of heading toward her car to come home, she walked 2 blocks to a small coffee shop I'd never heard her mention. Through the window, I watched her sit at a corner table and wait. 10 minutes later, Marcus walked in. They sat across from each other, but their body language was intimate. Marcus reached across the table and touched her hand. Sarah leaned forward, speaking quietly with a smile I recognized but had never seen her use with anyone but me. They talked for 45 minutes, and when they left, they walked in different directions to their separate cars. I drove home and was sitting on the couch when Sarah arrived an hour later. "Hey babe," she called out, setting her purse on the kitchen counter. "How's the project going?" "Still working on it," I replied. "Might be a few more late nights this week." "Oh, that's too bad. Maybe I'll grab dinner with Jenny or Lisa one of those nights so you don't have to worry about feeding me." The ease with which she lied was almost impressive. No hesitation, no guilty body language, just a smooth cover story that gave her freedom to meet Marcus without raising suspicions. Over the following month, I gathered more evidence. I started documenting their secret meetings, taking photos from a distance when I could safely do so. I discovered they met at that coffee shop every Thursday, always sitting at the same corner table. Sometimes they'd walk to a nearby park afterward, talking intensely while maintaining careful physical distance. I also started paying closer attention to Marcus during our group gatherings. He was good at acting normal, but once I knew what to look for, I could see the performance, the way he'd make jokes about his and Jenny's relationship that seemed designed to deflect any suspicion. How he'd sometimes reference things about Sarah that seemed too personal for a friend to know, like mentioning she'd been stressed about a work project she'd never told me about. The most damning evidence came 6 weeks after that Friday night game. I'd told Sarah I was going to a tech conference in Houston for the weekend. Instead, I stayed in a hotel across town and followed her on Saturday morning. She drove to a shopping center I'd never been to with her, parked near a department store, and waited. Marcus arrived 15 minutes later, parking several spaces away. They walked into the store separately but met inside, where they spent 2 hours shopping together like a couple. They looked at furniture, kitchen appliances, and home decor. Sarah was animated and happy in a way I rarely saw anymore. Marcus had his hand on her lower back as they moved between displays, guiding her with the casual intimacy of a long-term relationship. When they left the store, they drove separately to a chain restaurant where they had lunch. Through the window, I watched them share food off each other's plates and laughed together. At one point, Marcus leaned across the table and kissed her forehead gently. The tenderness of the gesture hit me harder than any passionate kiss would have. That night, I returned home as planned, claiming the conference had ended early. Sarah was cooking dinner, humming cheerfully to herself. She seemed more relaxed and happy than she'd been in months. "How was your conference?" she asked, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. "Productive," I said. "Learn anything interesting while I was gone?" "Not really. I just ran some errands and caught up on laundry. Pretty boring weekend." As I watched her continue cooking, chatting about her plans for the upcoming week, I realized the full scope of their betrayal. This wasn't just physical infidelity. They'd built an entire parallel relationship. They had inside jokes, shared experiences, and what looked like genuine emotional intimacy. They were essentially dating while married to other people. The betrayal wasn't just mine to bear. Jenny had no idea her husband was cheating on her with her best friend. She trusted them both completely, just as I had. They were using her trust, my trust, and our friendship to cover their affair. Every group gathering, every double date, every shared holiday was a lie they were all actively participating in while Jenny and I remained oblivious. That's when I started planning. I spent the next week researching divorce lawyers, private investigators, and the laws regarding evidence in adultery cases. I opened a separate bank account and started documenting our shared assets. I researched the consequences of infidelity in Texas divorce proceedings and learned how to protect myself financially. But more importantly, I started planning how to expose them in a way that would cause maximum damage to both their lives. They'd spent over a year lying to everyone who cared about them. They'd built their relationship on deception and betrayal. I was going to make sure that when the truth came out, it would destroy everything they'd built together and separately. The game of truth or dare had given me the truth. Now it was time for them to face the consequences of their choices, and I was going to make sure those consequences were devastating and permanent. My opportunity for revenge came 3 months after that truth or dare revelation. Sarah had been working late more frequently, claiming increased responsibilities at her marketing agency. In reality, I knew she was spending those evenings with Marcus, while Jenny worked her own late shifts at the hospital where she was a nurse. The perfect moment arrived when Sarah announced she was going to a work retreat in San Antonio for the weekend. She'd never mentioned any retreat before, and when I casually asked about it, her details were vague and inconsistent. She claimed it was a last-minute team-building event, but couldn't name which team members were attending or what hotel they'd be staying at. I hired a private investigator that week, a woman named Detective Rodriguez who specialized in infidelity cases. I'd researched her extensively and knew she was discreet, professional, and thorough. I provided her with all the documentation I'd gathered, the photos of their secret meetings, and Sarah's supposed retreat details. I need photographic evidence of their affair, I told her during our consultation. Pictures that will be legally admissible and impossible to deny. Detective Rodriguez nodded professionally. Based on what you've shown me, getting that evidence shouldn't be difficult. They've become careless because they think they're safe. That Friday evening, Sarah kissed me goodbye, rolling her small suitcase toward the door. She was wearing a new dress I'd never seen before, and her makeup was more elaborate than she'd wear for any work event. "I'll miss you," she said, the lie rolling off her tongue effortlessly. "The retreat is supposed to end Sunday afternoon, so I should be home by evening." "Have fun," I replied, hugging her tightly. "Learn lots of valuable marketing strategies." 2 hours after she left, Detective Rodriguez called me. "They're checked into the Hilton downtown under Mr. and Mrs. Thompson," she said. "False names, but they used Marcus's credit card. I have photos of them checking in together, entering the elevator, and kissing in the hallway outside their room. But I wasn't satisfied with just evidence of their affair. I wanted to expose them in a way that would be public, humiliating, and impossible for them to explain away or minimize. I wanted their lies to collapse spectacularly and simultaneously. That's when I remembered Jenny's birthday party. Jenny's 32nd birthday was the following Saturday, and she'd been planning a celebration for weeks. She'd rented a private room at an upscale restaurant and invited about 30 people, our entire extended friend group, her co-workers from the hospital, and some of Marcus's real estate colleagues. Sarah had volunteered to help with decorations and was supposed to give a speech as Jenny's best friend. Sarah and Marcus would both be there, forced to act normal while surrounded by everyone they'd been lying to. It was the perfect setting for maximum exposure and humiliation. I spent the week carefully planning every detail. I contacted Detective Rodriguez and arranged for her to attend the party as a friend of a friend, giving her access to document everything that happened. I prepared a presentation that would reveal their affair to everyone simultaneously, complete with photos, timeline evidence, and copies of their hotel records. But the most crucial element was getting both Sarah and Marcus to confess publicly. I needed them to admit their affair in front of everyone, so there could be no denying it later, no claiming the evidence was fabricated or taken out of context. Saturday evening arrived. The restaurant's private dining room was beautifully decorated with Jenny's favorite colors, soft blues and silver. About 25 people had gathered to celebrate, including several couples from our social circle, Jenny's nursing colleagues, and Marcus's business associates. Everyone was dressed nicely, laughing and socializing while waiting for dinner to be served. Sarah had arrived early to help with final preparations, playing the role of the devoted best friend perfectly. She'd brought a thoughtful gift and spent time arranging flowers on the tables. Marcus was working the room, charming everyone with stories and jokes, playing the part of the loving husband supporting his wife's celebration. I watched them carefully throughout the cocktail hour. They barely acknowledged each other directly, but I could see the subtle communication between them. A quick glance when no one was looking. Sarah touching her necklace when Marcus told a joke, apparently some kind of signal between them. They'd become experts at maintaining their secret while surrounded by the people they were betraying. After dinner, Jenny stood up to thank everyone for coming. She was radiant, surrounded by friends friends and feeling loved. She specifically thanked Sarah for being such an amazing friend, and Marcus for being such a supportive husband. The irony was painful to watch. "Now I think Sarah wanted to say something," Jenny announced, gesturing toward her best friend. Sarah stood up, wine glass in hand, smiling warmly at Jenny. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Jenny," Sarah began, "you've been like a sister to me for so many years. You're generous, loving, and trusting. Sometimes too trusting." Her voice caught slightly on those last words, and I saw something flicker across her face. "You deserve only the best things in life, and I hope this new year brings you everything you want." She raised her glass for a toast, but I stood up before anyone could drink. "Actually," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room, "I think there's something else that needs to be said tonight. Something about trust and friendship and what people really deserve to know." The room went quiet. Sarah's face went pale, and I saw Marcus tense up in his chair. "Sarah," I continued, looking directly at my wife, "remember that truth or dare game 3 months ago? You whispered something in my ear that night, something you thought I might not remember because you were so drunk." Sarah's wine glass started shaking in her hand. "David, what are you doing?" "I'm telling the truth," I said, pulling out a folder of printed photographs. "The truth about what you whispered to me. The truth about where you really were last weekend instead of at a work retreat. The truth about what you and Marcus have been doing every Thursday afternoon for over a year." Marcus shot to his feet. "David, I don't know what you think you know, but I know everything," I interrupted, opening the folder. "I have photos of you two at the coffee shop on 6th Street. Pictures of you shopping together like a couple while your wives thought you were working. Hotel records from last weekend showing you checked in as Mr. and Mrs. Thompson." Jenny's face crumpled as the implications hit her. Several people gasped. The room erupted in shocked murmurs as I continued laying out the evidence methodically. "Sarah confessed to me during Truth or Dare that she'd been sleeping with Marcus for over a year," I announced to the room. She was too drunk to realize I heard every word clearly. Sarah dropped her wine glass, and it shattered on the floor. "David, please, we can talk about this privately." "No," I said firmly. "You had over a year to talk to me privately. You chose to lie instead. Just like you're lying to Jenny right now by standing there acting like her best friend." Jenny stood up slowly, tears streaming down her face. "Marcus," she whispered, looking at her husband, "is this true?" Marcus looked around the room at all the faces staring at him, his carefully constructed facade finally cracking. "Jenny, we never meant for it to happen." That was all the confirmation needed. Jenny let out a sob and ran from the room. Several of her nursing colleagues followed her. The remaining guests sat in stunned silence, processing the destruction of 2 marriages happening before their eyes. Sarah turned to me with tears in her eyes. "How could you do this here? In front of everyone? How could I do this?" I repeated incredulously. "How could you sleep with my best friend for over a year? How could you lie to my face every single day? How could you help plan this party for the woman whose husband you've been stealing?" The room was watching this confrontation like a car accident they couldn't look away from. Marcus tried to approach Jenny's direction, but one of her colleagues blocked his path. "Don't you dare follow her," the colleague said firmly. "You've done enough damage." As the party dissolved into chaos around us, I realized my revenge was complete. Their affair was exposed publicly, their reputations destroyed in front of friends and colleagues. There would be no way to spin this, no way to minimize the damage, no way to claim it was a misunderstanding. Sarah and Marcus had built their relationship on lies and betrayal. Now everyone they knew was witnessing the complete collapse of everything they'd constructed, and they had no one to blame but themselves. The aftermath at Jenny's birthday party was swift and devastating. Within minutes of my revelation, the celebration had transformed into a nightmare of accusations, tears, and shattered friendships. Most of the guests left quickly, uncomfortable with being witnesses to such personal destruction. The few who stayed were Jenny's closest nursing colleagues, who formed a protective circle around her. Marcus tried desperately to control the damage. "This is all blown out of proportion," he said to anyone who would listen. "David is obviously having some kind of breakdown. These photos could be from anything." But Detective Rodriguez, who'd been recording everything from her position near the bar, stepped forward with her credentials and additional evidence. "I'm a licensed private investigator, and I've been documenting this affair for weeks. Everything Mr. Thompson has presented tonight is legally admissible evidence." Sarah collapsed into a chair, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. "David, please," she begged. "We can work through this. It doesn't have to end our marriage." "Our marriage ended the moment you decided to sleep with my best friend," I replied coldly. "I just finally got the truth you were never going to tell me." The weeks following Jenny's ruined birthday party were a whirlwind of legal meetings, paperwork, and consequences. I'd prepared for this moment extensively, so I was ready to move quickly while Sarah and Marcus scrambled to deal with the fallout. Jenny filed for divorce within a week. Her nursing colleagues had rallied around her, providing emotional support and helping her understand her legal options. She'd retained one of Austin's most aggressive divorce attorneys and was seeking half of Marcus's real estate business plus alimony. The public nature of the affair had destroyed Marcus's professional reputation. Several clients canceled their contracts, and his business partners were considering dissolving their partnership. "I can't believe I defended him to people who tried to warn me," Jenny told me during one of our meetings. "We'd stayed in contact contact to coordinate our divorce proceedings and share evidence. My sister always said something felt off about him, but I thought she was just being overprotective. Sarah's situation was equally dire. Her marketing agency had a strict morality clause in their employment contracts, and the public scandal had embarrassed several high-profile clients. She'd been placed on administrative leave pending an internal review, and rumors suggested she'd be terminated soon. "The whole office knows," she told me during one of our last conversations as a married couple. "Everyone's looking at me like I'm some kind of homewrecker. Lisa won't even speak to me anymore." "You are a homewrecker," I pointed out. "You wrecked Jenny's home and ours." Our friend group had completely disintegrated. Tom and Lisa had chosen sides immediately. They supported Jenny and me, cutting off all contact with Sarah and Marcus. Other couples from our social circle had done the same. The affair had forced everyone to pick a side, and the overwhelming majority had chosen the betrayed spouses over the cheaters. The most satisfying consequence was watching Sarah and Marcus's relationship crumble under the pressure. When their affair was secret and exciting, it had thrived on the thrill of deception. But once it was exposed and they were free to be together openly, the reality of their situation set in. Marcus was facing financial ruin from his divorce and the collapse of his business. Sarah was unemployed and struggling to find new work in Austin's tight-knit marketing community. They'd gone from successful professionals with stable marriages to unemployed pariahs whose reputations preceded them everywhere they went. 2 months after the party, Sarah moved out of our house and into a small apartment across town. She'd tried to claim half of our assets in the divorce, but the evidence of her affair gave me significant leverage in negotiations. Texas is a community property state, but adultery can affect the division of assets, especially when the cheating spouse spent marital funds on the affair. Detective Rodriguez had documented expenses that Marcus and Sarah had charged to their respective credit cards during their relationship. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, gifts for each other. Those receipts became evidence of them using marital assets to fund their betrayal. "She spent our money on hotel rooms to cheat on me," I explained to my divorce attorney. "She used our joint credit card to buy him gifts. Every romantic dinner they shared was paid for with money that belonged to both of us." The final blow came when Sarah tried to reconcile. 3 months after the party, she showed up at our house, her former house, looking desperate and defeated. She'd lost 20 pounds, her hair was unkempt, and she had dark circles under her eyes. "David, I made a terrible mistake," she said, standing on the porch where she used to live. "Marcus and I aren't together anymore. It was never real. It was just the excitement of something forbidden. You and I had something real. We can rebuild this." I looked at the woman I'd been married to for 5 years, the woman I'd trusted completely, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "Sarah, you didn't make a mistake. You made thousands of conscious choices over more than a year. You chose to lie to me every single day. You chose to betray Jenny while pretending to be her best friend. You chose to sleep with my best friend in our bed while I was at work." "But I love you," she insisted, tears streaming down her face. "I never stopped loving you. The thing with Marcus was it was stupid and meaningless." "If it was meaningless, why did you do it for over a year?" I asked. "If you loved me, why didn't you end it after the first time? Why did you plan weekend getaways with him? Why did you shop for furniture together like you were building a life?" She had no answer for that, because there was no answer. She'd made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. "The divorce papers will be final next month," I told her. "After that, I never want to see you again." Marcus had tried a similar approach with Jenny, but she'd been even more decisive in rejecting him. She'd changed all the locks on their house, cleaned out their joint accounts, and filed a restraining order when he wouldn't stop showing up at her workplace. "I gave him 15 years of my life," Jenny told me. "I supported his business, defended him to my family, and stood by him through every challenge. And he repaid that loyalty by having an affair with my best friend. There's no coming back from that level of betrayal." The private investigator bill was worth every penny. Detective Rodriguez had not only provided the evidence I needed for the divorce, but her presence at the party had legitimized my accusations and prevented Sarah and Marcus from claiming I'd fabricated anything. As I sat in my house now, since Sarah had signed it over to me in the divorce settlement, I reflected on how completely their lives had been destroyed by their own choices. They'd lost their marriages, their friends, their professional reputations, and ultimately each other. The truth or dare game that had revealed their secret had set in motion a chain of events that led to total devastation for both of them. And the most beautiful part was that they had no one to blame but themselves. Every consequence they faced was the direct result of their decision to betray the people who loved and trusted them most. 1 year after that devastating truth or dare game, my life had transformed completely. The divorce was finalized. Sarah had moved to Dallas to escape the social fallout in Austin, and I'd rebuilt my world from the ground up. What started as the worst night of my life had ultimately become the catalyst for the best year I'd ever experienced. Jenny and I had become closer friends through our shared experience of betrayal and recovery. She'd thrived after her divorce, getting promoted to head nurse at her hospital and buying a beautiful condo downtown. We occasionally met for coffee to catch up on our new lives and laugh about how much better off we were without our cheating spouses. "You know what's funny?" Jenny said during one of our coffee dates. "I'm happier now than I was in in my entire marriage. I just didn't realize how much energy I was spending trying to make Marcus happy and ignoring my own needs. I understood exactly what she meant. Without the constant stress of living with someone who was lying to me every day, I'd rediscovered parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. I'd started rock climbing, joined a hiking group, and even tried my hand at photography. My house felt peaceful instead of tense, and I woke up each morning excited about the day ahead instead of dreading potential conflicts or deceptions. The professional consequences for Sarah and Marcus had been permanent and severe. Marcus's real estate business had collapsed completely. His former partners had bought out his share for a fraction of what it was worth, and he'd been forced to declare bankruptcy. He'd left Austin 6 months after the divorce and was apparently working as a sales associate at a furniture store in San Antonio, a dramatic fall from his previous success. Sarah's career in marketing was effectively over in Texas. The story of her affair had spread through Austin's professional networks, and no reputable agency would hire her. She'd eventually found work as a freelance social media coordinator, making a fraction of her previous salary and struggling to pay rent on a studio apartment. I heard she tried to get a job at 3 different agencies in Dallas, Tom told me during one of our regular game nights. Our new group consisted of Jenny, Tom, Lisa, and a few new friends we'd met through various activities. They all said her references checked out professionally, but when they Googled her name, the story came up immediately. The digital age had made their shame permanent. News of their affair had spread beyond our immediate social circle through social media and professional networks. Their names were forever linked to the story of betrayal and public humiliation. Every future employer, potential romantic partner, or new acquaintance could easily discover their history with a simple internet search. But the most satisfying consequence was learning that their relationship had imploded spectacularly. The affair that had seemed so passionate and meaningful when it was secret had crumbled under the weight of reality. Without the thrill of deception and the excitement of stolen moments, they'd discovered they had nothing substantial in common. They broke up 2 months after the divorces were final, Lisa reported with obvious satisfaction. Apparently, Sarah wanted Marcus to move to Dallas with her for a fresh start, but he blamed her for everything going wrong. He said if she hadn't gotten so drunk that night, you never would have found out. The irony was perfect. Sarah's drunken confession during Truth or Dare, the moment she thought was just harmless fun, had been the first domino in a chain reaction that destroyed everything they'd built together. Marcus resented her for the slip-up that exposed them, while Sarah blamed him for not being willing to fight for their relationship once it was public. I'd started dating again around the 8-month mark. Through my hiking group, I'd met Rebecca, a veterinarian who was intelligent, funny, and refreshingly honest about everything. She knew the full story of my divorce and respected how I'd handled the situation. You could have just quietly divorced her, Rebecca pointed out during one of our early conversations. A lot of people would have avoided the public confrontation. I considered that, I admitted. But they weren't just lying to me. They were lying to Jenny, to all our friends, to their co-workers. They were using everyone's trust to cover their affair. I felt like everyone deserved to know the truth about who they really were. Rebecca nodded approvingly. You exposed them because their actions affected more people than just you. That takes courage. The new relationship was built on a foundation of complete honesty and mutual respect. Rebecca and I talked about everything. Our past relationships, our fears, our goals for the future. After experiencing the devastating effects of deception in marriage, I'd become committed to radical transparency in all my relationships. My career had flourished during this period as well. Without the emotional drain of a failing marriage, I'd been able to focus completely on my work. I'd been promoted to senior software engineer and was leading a team on innovative projects. The company had even paid for me to attend conferences and training programs that expanded my skills significantly. I'd also used some of my divorce settlement money to renovate the house completely. I'd torn down walls to create an open floor plan, updated the kitchen with modern appliances, and converted the spare bedroom into a home office. Every room held new memories now. Dinner parties with real friends, quiet evenings working on personal projects, lazy Sunday mornings with Rebecca. The Truth or Dare game that had destroyed my old life had taught me invaluable lessons about trust, friendship, and self-respect. I'd learned that some betrayals are so fundamental they can never be forgiven or overcome. I discovered that public consequences are sometimes necessary to prevent people from minimizing their actions or rewriting history to make themselves look better. Most importantly, I'd realized that my capacity for strategic thinking and long-term planning, skills I used in my professional life, could be applied to personal situations when necessary. The months of careful documentation, legal preparation, and tactical planning had resulted in complete victory over people who tried to manipulate and deceive me. As I sat in my renovated living room exactly 1 year after that fateful game night, I felt a profound sense of satisfaction and closure. Sarah and Marcus had lost everything because of their choices, their marriages, their careers, their social standing, their financial security, and ultimately each other. Meanwhile, Jenny and I had rebuilt our lives stronger and happier than before. The wine glass Sarah had dropped when I exposed her affair had left a small stain on the hardwood floor that I'd never bothered to fix. It served as a reminder reminder of that moment when their carefully constructed lies had shattered as completely as the glass itself. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled the situation, whether I should have been more private or less dramatic in my approach. But I have no regrets whatsoever. Sarah and Marcus spent over a year deceiving everyone who cared about them. They used our trust and friendship to cover their betrayal. They deserved to face public consequences for their public deception. The truth or dare game had started as innocent fun among friends, but it had revealed the darkest secret in our group. What Sarah whispered in my ear that night, thinking I wouldn't remember clearly, became the key to exposing everything they'd worked so hard to hide. In the end, the truth always comes out. Sometimes you just need to be patient and strategic about how you reveal it. Looking back, I'm grateful for that drunken confession. It freed me from a marriage built on lies and led me to a life built on honesty, respect, and genuine connection. Sarah's whispered secret had been intended to stay hidden forever, but instead, it became the catalyst for the most important truth of all, that I deserved better than living a lie, and I had the strength and intelligence to demand it. What do you think about this story? Have you ever discovered a betrayal that completely changed your perspective on someone you trusted? How would you have handled this situation differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please show your support by leaving a like and letting me know what you think. Thank you for reading until the end, and I appreciate all of your engagement with these stories.